Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Your Life His Story podcast. I'm your host again, Wade Vincent. And with me today, super excited, Casie Harris.
Hey, Wade. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. We met at a leadership program that we graduated together in. It was kind of cool. And that's how we met. And then we've become friends. And we've had dinner together with our spouses and everything. So, yeah, it's been really great to get to know you. And as we did, you kind of shared a little bit of your story with me, and I was like, oh, I got some other people need to hear that for sure. Yeah. So anyway, but just to kind of get started, maybe you could just tell the listeners that don't, or viewers that don't know you, maybe just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a Southeast Texas native, born and raised here. I have 3 kids. They are grown. My oldest is 28 and my baby is 22. I have a few grandkids.
You really don't look, and this is not a line, you don't look old enough to have a 28-year-old kid.
I love it. I'm really not. I started way too young, but that's another story for another day. Have some grandkids that just make my world better, and I work in the nonprofit sector, and for some reason I love to volunteer.
Yeah.
You have something for me to do? Like, I need to feel good.
Right. So maybe we could back up, and where do you think that comes from? Kind of how, when you were growing up as a kid, was there something that kind of created that in you that would make you want to volunteer like that?
I watched my dad. My dad was one of those people that always gave back. He grew up with not much of anything. There were, I think, 13 siblings in his family.
Wow.
He started working from a very young age to buy necessities like toothpaste and, deodorant, things like that. But watching him as we grew up, like, he always gave back. I was in probably 6th grade when I realized what my dad did. And what he would do was collect bicycles throughout the year. He would repaint them, fix them up, new things on the handlebars, new tires, whatever they needed. And then on Christmas Eve, he would dress as Santa and go deliver those bikes to kids in the area.
Oh, wow.
It grew into something much larger. Your kids move out, you get a little more money.
Right.
And so that happened, and he started like purchasing toys and bikes kind of throughout the year. And as my brother grew up, he became a part of it. And we actually now have a nonprofit foundation.
Wow.
That focuses on that.
That's
So,
awesome.
I watched my dad constantly give back. He volunteered for the Red Cross. So I think that it's probably just something that's
kind of in your DNA a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I guess we could kind of just get into, I know some of your story you shared a little bit with me, but maybe what would you like to share with us where God really did something in your life that, that kind of really changed the outcome of your story? Is there something in particular that you would, share with us?
I learned about forgiveness. I learned truly what forgiveness is and how it looks. I grew up in a pretty large family. There were 1 boy and 4 girls. My parents got divorced when I was young. Some of us lived with mom, some lived with dad. And my brother was the oldest. Just kind of that glue. Us girls, when we're together, we always argue like, who's the favorite? No, I'm dad's favorite. I'm mom's favorite. But when Randy stepped in the room, there was no arguing because we knew.
He was the fave.
100%. We called him Precious. And it wasn't like, oh, here comes Precious. It was like, here comes Precious. I would always say, Mom, Randy is not perfect. Jesus is the only one that could walk on water. And my sweet mama would say, well, he's perfect to me. And that's what it was like growing up with him. And so
did you have any resentment for that or?
No.
Okay.
No, he was like.
So it was all kind of in fun.
100%.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Us girls, that might be a different story, but we knew there was, it's Randy, whatever. He was one of those people that made you feel special. Like you didn't know who his favorite sister was because he made everyone feel favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
The nieces and nephews, like they thought they were the one and only niece and nephew in his life. And that's how he was. He was just that person that was so giving and caring and all those things.
That's something I've always tried to be. I don't know that I do it perfectly.
Yeah.
But I try to, I don't want to make somebody feel less than another, but unfortunately I didn't perfect it like him because I think some people know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And he, like, I remember one year he was like he had gotten a new Harley Davidson jacket. He rode motorcycles. And he was strutting around the house on Thanksgiving, talking about all the girls he was going to get, how hot he looked, like how much he paid for it. He was so excited, so proud of it. And we went to a movie that evening, like the whole family, and there was a homeless guy. It started snowing. And there was a homeless guy like sitting on the side of the road, and he just took his jacket off, handed it to him, and kept walking. And it was like, I guess he's going to get the girls, Randy, but that's how he was. So, but yeah, no,
So now I kind of get why he was the favorite.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks. I try really hard, really hard. And in 2011, he left for a motorcycle rally in Austin.
And about how was he and you at this time?
He was 42. So I was 33.
Okay.
And he left. He took off work early. He stopped by my dad's house. At that time, my daughter, she had just finished second grade. She was at my dad's for the summer. And as he goes to leave, she runs outside and she says, "Hold on, Uncle Randy. I need one more hug and one more kiss." And he bent down. He gave her one more hug and one more kiss. And none of us knew that would be the last time we saw him.
Wow.
He went to the rally. He was not a drinker. He liked the scenery of the rally. He liked Bill. He liked motorcycles, all that. But he was not a party man. And as it starts getting late that night, he ran into a lady he knew from Fort Worth. She was there, and she was heavily intoxicated. And he said, "Lori, what are your plans for the night?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I can't leave you here. Like, I'm not leaving without you. Like, you need to come with me. I'm not trying to mess with you. Like, come with me."
Yeah.
And he kept telling her it's not safe. And she's like, "Well, Randy, like, I'm scared of motorcycles. I don't ride motorcycles." And he said, "It's okay, Lori. Come with me and I'll take you the safe way." So Lori climbed on the back of his bike, and he had, there was another couple behind them. And they were in Austin, and they took all the back roads as far as they could. Because he promised her it's going to be safe.
Right.
So they're sitting at the intersection in Austin. It's Ed Bluestein and MLK. He's getting ready to make a left-hand turn. He's given the protected left. He goes to make the left-hand turn when a 30-year-old man driving a Nissan Pathfinder runs the red light and kills my brother instantly.
Oh.
Lori, fine, so to speak. I mean, she had a lot of damage. She's gone through a lot of surgeries, but she survived. And it's, that is the day everything in my life changed. It's kind of like I look at my life, and if you mention something, you're like, "Hey, do you remember blah, blah, blah?" It's like my mind automatically goes back to like, was that before or after?
Yeah.
There's like a big divide.
Yeah. And now from conversations we kind of had before that, like he was your favorite. Right.
I mean, definitely my favorite brother. Yes.
We shouldn't say that on air, I guess, but
I retract any of these statements.
But you were really close to him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all of us were really close to him. He was that person that he was going to call his sisters and say Happy Mother's Day before our kids that were young even had a chance to wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we were close. I don't know that I'm any closer to him. I just think that's how he was.
Right.
So yeah. So when all this happened, like the really ironic thing, I guess you could say, is 2 years before my brother was killed by an intoxicated driver, my nephew and 2 of his friends were severely injured by an intoxicated driver. And we had just finished all the court case, all the things like a month before. So like we kind of knew what to expect. We went to Austin all the time for court. And my dad kept saying, like, "I need to know about this man." He's like, "What if he has a family?" Randy would not want someone to go to prison like if they deserved a second chance. Dad would get frustrated at work and somebody would need to get fired. Something would need to happen, like they would need to go because they worked together. They were business partners. And Randy would find every reason for them to get a second chance. Dad, they just bought a new truck. Their wife's pregnant. Whatever it was, like Randy was finding a reason. And so my dad's like, what if this is someone Randy would give a second chance to? So we learned about this man, learned a lot about him, about his family, about his upbringing, his kids, like what he did for work. And the first time we laid eyes on this man in court, he looked straight at my family and he said, I'm sorry. And you could truly see the forgiveness, like the sorrow, the remorse in him. And it wasn't immediate, but like I came to that forgiveness. And I could not have done that at all without, God in my life, without that guidance. And
So did you feel that like that day, or was this a process for you?
It was definitely a process. I think we had to go to court. It was like every month or every other month. But every time we would go to court, like he would come up and he would speak to us. And he would, every single time we saw him, he would tell us how sorry he was. His family would come up and speak to us and tell us how, sorry they were. They called my brother by name. They didn't shy away from what he did.
Right.
And it was like, wow,
I think how, I don't want to blame everything on the devil. I'm not one of those people that thinks I think most of our problems is probably stuff we create, what I'm saying? But he does exist, what I'm saying? And I just think about how, what he was trying to do literally was destroy both families.
Absolutely.
Every person in both families.
Absolutely. And we decided to come together. My family sat down with the district attorney's office and we said, look, this man is remorseful. Like, we want to help him. We want to do something to where, like, first of all, help him heal too. Help him heal while we heal. Let's work together to make a difference. Like, I was really big on, like, I didn't want Randy's death to be in vain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, like, what can we do? The man got what was called shock probation, where you go to prison for 6 months and then you're supposed to be shocked. You never want to go back. And then when you get out, you start your probation. So he got 10 years probation. He had to wear an ankle monitor that detects your blood alcohol content on average every 30 minutes. And it's expensive. It's like $400 a month. And this was, 14 years ago. So that was even more than $400 a month is now. And this guy made like $30,000 a year at that time. And my dad said, look, I know you can't put it in the paperwork, but I'll pay for it. As long as he's doing the right thing, I'll pay for it. I don't care. I just don't want him to drink.
That just speaks so highly of your dad.
Yeah.
He's gonna pay, it's almost like something very spiritual to this, because he's going to pay the price with his son for what he did. Wow.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It's something.
Wow. Yeah.
We had a cross like up at the crash site, and we asked that Mr. Flores cut the grass around the cross. And we speak for MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, all over the state. And we ask that once a year he share his story with us, because if we felt like if we could team up and we could share our stories together, like people could see both sides of what happens. Like, we just felt like it would be really powerful. And like there were a couple other small things that we requested he did. So we went to prison. He did his 6 months. While he was in prison, my dad put $100 a month on his commissary, because prison is not free. And my mom and myself and my sisters, like, we would write him cards and letters of encouragement. The day he was sentenced, I told him, I forgive you. I forgive what you did. And we want you to succeed. We don't want you to lose your family like we lost ours. He said, we are your biggest cheerleader or your worst enemy. Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
You've already destroyed 2 families. Like, let's make it okay. So he went to prison. He did his 6 months and he got out. And he was out for a couple months when he failed his drug test. And so he went back to prison. And I think that's really probably when I learned what forgiveness was. Really, I mean, I had forgiven him, but I really hadn't seen like the unconditional part of forgiveness.
Yeah. So you were kind of basing that maybe on, he said he was sorry.
Yeah.
You had met his family. You feel sorry for him and his family. And so I'm gonna forgive him based on kind of a little bit qualifying him.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So when he was sentenced back to prison, like, I'm going to be honest, my heart was broken, but it didn't change the forgiveness that I had. That, and I just think, like, someone said, like, you forgave him. Why do you fight his parole? And I said, because our children that we gave life to, they make bad choices, whether it's, cheating on a test at school, like whatever it is. And you forgive them, but they still have consequences. So I feel like you can forgive someone and still hold them accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because obviously God offers us forgiveness, but we're not immune from the consequences of our bad decisions.
Right, absolutely. So that's really what I learned. Just about, I feel like I did so much internal looking at myself, because usually somebody makes you mad and then they can make you mad. You're like, oh, it's fine, I'm not mad. But then, like, maybe it builds up. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure.
But it wasn't like that. We don't have the same relationship that we had. His family has been still to this day very supportive of my family. They have came down and done some of the things that he was supposed to do. His dad battled cancer, and while he was battling cancer, he was cutting grass around my brother's cross. They carried that burden for what he did.
Yeah. So it's such a shame because, if I'll just be honest, like I remember, back when I was, late teens and getting into my 20s, I mean, and there's a few times that I don't remember driving home. I'm honest, you know what I'm saying? And thankfully, nothing happened. And of course, at my age, it would have just been a horrible accident. You wouldn't be in jail or any of those things. But I still think about, I think, how you say, except for the grace of God, go out, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, you hate that it's just wrecked this family. And obviously if I was that guy, I don't know that I could ever forgive myself. Right. I would just really struggle with that, for sure.
Yeah. I feel I can see that.
Yeah.
I don't think I could take someone's life and just be like, well, it wasn't intentional. I'll just go on about my day. And that's what I saw in him. It was like we started going to court in August of 2011, and he was sentenced actually Good Friday of 2012. In that little bit of time, like, you could see him age, even the way he carried himself, everything about him. Yeah. He didn't look 30 years old.
Yeah, the unfortunate, I think the unfortunate thing, and I don't want to take anything away from the story, but I'm just thinking about that when you're watching the alcohol commercial, and again, I don't want to get off into becoming sounding religious or something about all this stuff, but they just show all the good times. They don't show you the wrecked lives. You know what I'm saying? When people can't control the amount, or and I think a lot of the shows that I think were on there, I don't watch too much TV anymore, but it's literally just saying, hey, this is what you should be behaving.
Right.
And it's really very, very reckless, and it destroys lives for sure.
Yeah, and I think, that is probably why I've tried so hard. I went to work for Mothers Against Drunk Driving for a couple years, and I advocated for families that, lost family members, families that lost people through the court system. I've, talked about the dangers of alcohol and, at schools. I help the police academies when they're doing their standardized field sobriety testing. And I think that's why it's so important to me to make sure that I know I'm one person, but let me do as much educating as I can.
Absolutely.
Let me show you the other side. And it's not always, the innocent person driving down the street that gets killed.
Right.
No,
Sure.
it's
I'm thinking for me, and part of the reason I've started this podcast is because I just see the things that, people will try to fill that hole with something, whether it's fame or money or alcohol, drugs, whatever, what I'm saying, whatever they do. And the thing about it is it's never enough. And then it gets into excess and it just destroys lives. And so, to me, it's like the answer for all this is to put yourself, give yourself to Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Put your hands in the Lord and let Him, because He's the only one that can fill that hole. And any, and I'm not saying, listen, I try to fill it with a bunch of things too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not a judgment from me, right? It's just, I now know the answer.
Right.
That's the answer.
Absolutely.
And you can save yourself a ton of grief if you just get there without taking the other steps. I mean, unfortunately, most of us have to hit some kind of rock bottom, right? You know what I'm saying?
True.
Whatever that is. But so just to dive a little bit deeper. So when, kind of retracted back, whenever he had to go back to prison because he stepped back into his addiction, right? That didn't make you rethink your forgiveness level at all?
I didn't rethink my forgiveness level. It frustrated me because I thought, do we care more about his family than he does? But I never thought you know what? I don't forgive him. I also felt like he wasn't in prison for killing my brother. He was in prison because he couldn't follow the rules.
Yeah.
We as a family weren't pushing for him to go. At that point, my stance is, so I want to say this before I continue. Drunk driving is a choice. It's a choice you make. Before you take the first drink, you have to get home.
Yeah, if you get in your car and drive to the bar, you've already made a choice.
Right. However, I understand after you start putting things in your body, you are not clear thinking, right? He had already seen what could happen. And so I feel like this choice was a clear choice that he made. He had already been to prison for 6 months. He had already been away from his family. So I didn't feel like, I don't know how to say it. It didn't feel personal to me. It didn't feel like, I didn't feel like he's going to prison because he killed my brother. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I think that's why I was able to say the forgiveness was still there. And I told him that the day that he was re-sentenced to prison, which was 1 day shy of 1 year of the original sentence. I said, my forgiveness isn't conditional, but I will do my part to make sure you serve your time. I still forgive you.
But at that point, you're trying to protect other people, so that that back to what you said, I didn't want my brother to pass away in vain. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, I'm going to do everything to make sure he doesn't do that to anybody else. But I'm going to forgive you in my heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, that's really impressive. I mean, and really just kind of hearing a little bit about your dad, your whole family, but kind of your dad's it's really kind of impressive. Well, I know we're kind of getting, time is running on us. So is there any kind of last thoughts or anything you'd want to leave the listener viewers with? Any last parting thoughts?
I want to say this, I can remember right after my brother was killed. I was just riding around and I'm like, why? Why did this happen? Why? My nephew stayed with us for a year, my brother's son. Was registering him for school, and I was just sitting in the car just crying my eyes out. And I'm not a person that believes like God makes everything happen. You know, I feel like God gives us free will. We're not his puppets.
Totally agree with that. Totally.
You know, so I was sitting there and like I've never had it before, but I feel like it was a vision from God, and it was like a roadmap. And it was big things that had happened in my life. Big things like on this map. It was, you know, my daughter's, you know, dad passing away caused me to meet my husband now, caused, you know, all these things to like my husband lost his job. Well, he just went back into like the field where he was making more money like a month before my brother was killed. Like we purchased this house that had room for, you know, everyone. And God said, I have prepared you for this. So, you know, I feel like when we go through those highs and those lows, valleys in the mountains, like he's preparing us. He's preparing us for our testimony, no matter what it is, no matter if we like it. And it's so important to hold close to him during those times. So I feel like it's more important to like, so many times, like when you're in that low, that's when you're ready. That's when you're ready. Like,
for sure.
Like, I need you, God, let me pray. But like, you need him on those best days too. And it's so important to remember that those best days, you need him just as much.
Yeah, I think for the human condition and the flesh, you're probably in more danger when you're on your highs than you are in your lows. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because you know, whether it's ego or feeling like you got it all under control, or you don't need anybody or whatever. Yeah, you can definitely put yourself in a hazardous position. Well, I so appreciate you coming and sharing your story, and you know, I'm thinking right now, and because you know, we try to keep these segments to a reasonable time because people's attention spans are shorter than ever, right? But we may have to do a follow up on this and get a little more into the details because I'd like to know more about your dad, really, honestly, just the things I've heard, so. Anyway, for this session, I hope you get something out of that. You know that no, you know, you can think of the worst possible situations, and God can help you forgive, even in the worst possible situations. And I guess I'll wrap up by saying, you know, I agree with you 100%. Like, you know, we're not robots. We're free to make, you know, choices, but God has an amazing ability to work everything for good. Absolutely. So everything is not good, and everything that happens to you is not good, but He can still work it for good. And one of my first guests, she was talking about, you know, the purpose and the pain. And I can think back, you know, to myself. And I was actually telling somebody this earlier today that the worst year of my life, the worst year that I ever went through was the best year for me. But it was the hardest year for me, you know, and I hated that year. But I can look back now and I said, man, I wouldn't be who I am without that.
My dad has always said that. He said the hard times are always the best.
They're the best for you. Kind of the worst to you, but the best for you. Yeah. So, well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we're going to wrap things up. But thanks for listening in. Would love for you. I haven't said this much, but hey, subscribe, comment if you have questions. You know, we'll get on there and answer. And even if there's a subject that you want us to get into in some future podcasts, just reach out to us, and we'd love to. I have a lot of guests and have a lot of information out there, and I've just enjoyed each and every one. So. We'll see you next week.